Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea has signed preliminary deals with global pharmaceutical companies to secure COVID-19 vaccines for 44 million people, with rollout to start by March at the latest. The UK, meanwhile, is starting its vaccine rollout today. President Moon Jae-in says South Korea will consider joining the new mega trade bloc in the Pacific, the successor to TPP. It's the first time he's mentioned it publicly. And data show 3 in 10 South Koreans live by themselves. It's a sign of the country's changing social structure and the rapid aging of its population, especially. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The UK has become the first Western country to start administering a vaccine for COVID-19. The first injection was given just minutes ago. In South Korea, the government announced today that it has secured pre-orders of vaccines from several sources, enough for about 44 million people. A timeline's yet to be decided, but it'll start by March at the latest. Kim Do-yeon has the details.
The South Korean government has secured enough COVID-19 vaccines for 44 million people after striking preliminary deals with a number of vaccine developers and from a global vaccine project. On Tuesday, the health minister announced that as well as the doses for 10 million people from the COVAX facility, the government has pre-ordered additional vaccines from 4 vaccine developers. Those deals are 20 million doses from AstraZeneca, 20 million from Pfizer, 4 million from Janssen, and 20 million from Moderna. A total of 34 million people will be able to be vaccinated by those doses. Altogether, roughly 88% of the total population of South Korea can be vaccinated. The government also explained that it'll be flexible when it starts to roll out vaccines, but said it'll begin by March at the latest.
We will begin preparations for COVID-19 vaccines. We expect many obstacles along the way due to the COVID-19 vaccines requiring complicated storage conditions and having short expiration dates. The government will start the preparation process regardless of when it starts.
He added there will be a new task force created for the vaccination process. With the vaccines not yet developed completely, the government will make sure they're safe for use before distributing them. The government says the plan is to have the most vulnerable, such as senior citizens and frontline medical workers, vaccinated first. The minister also showed hopes for domestic COVID-19 treatments.
In addition to COVID-19 vaccines, we may have some results for the approvals on multiple domestic treatments by the end of the year, or at the latest, early next year.
South Korean pharmaceutical company Celltrion has been waiting for emergency approval for its antibiotic treatment, which it claims effectively prevents mild COVID-19 patients from developing a severe case. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has chosen to serve as his Secretary of Defense, retired Army General Lloyd Austin. The news was first reported by Politico, citing sources familiar with the matter. If confirmed, Austin would be the first African-American Secretary of Defense. Austin led U.S. forces in the Middle East under President Obama and was the first black general to oversee an entire theater of combat. An official announcement is expected as soon as Tuesday. President Moon Jae-in said today that South Korea will consider joining the mega trade bloc set up as the successor to the TPP. The new deal without the United States is known as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's the first time President Moon has publicly mentioned joining it. He was speaking at an event to mark Trade Day in South Korea, a celebration of the contributions and achievements of the country's exporters. Kim Min-ji has the details.
President Moon Jae-in says South Korea will consider joining another major trade pact in the Asia-Pacific region, highlighting the need to diversify the country's trading partners. At an event on Tuesday to celebrate the country's 57th Trade Day, Moon said there will be fierce competition to gain an upper hand in the market as it rebounds in the post-virus era.
CPTPP 가입도 계속 검토해 나갈 것입니다. 또한 자유무역과 다자주의를 회복하고 무역 장벽을 낮추기 위한 WTO, G20 등 국제사회 논의에도 주도적으로 참여하겠습니다.
The CPTPP, or Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, brings together 11 countries, including Japan and Canada. Taking effect in 2018, it evolved from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, led by the U.S. under the Barack Obama administration, which President Donald Trump withdrew from. There's speculation that under Joe Biden, the U.S. might join. In November, South Korea signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, a 15-member mega-trade deal that includes China. There had been concerns as Seoul could be in an awkward position amid the tensions between Washington and Beijing should it not join the CPTPP.
It's important for South Korea to join the CPTPP, especially if the U.S. joins, because then South Korea can engage in multilateral trade with its second-largest trading partner, the U.S. It's also a strategic move to expand the country's free trade network as the pact includes South America. There shouldn't be a problem persuading China given Seoul's economic ties with Washington, and down the line, Beijing could join too.
This is the first time the Moon has publicly mentioned the possibility. Last month, the top office said that the two trade pacts are not contradictory but complementary, saying that now is not the right time to discuss whether to join. President Moon also said that South Korea will expand its free trade network by finalizing deals with Israel and Indonesia within this year and will continue FTA talks with China and Russia in the service and investment sectors. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, good to have you back on.
Good afternoon.
Well, stocks in New York overnight were mixed. The Dow, the S&P lower, but the Nasdaq with its tech stocks closed higher. A lot of uncertainty in the European markets, it seems, over an exit deal with the UK. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, it seems that the global equity market is showing some kind of taking breather, as it's been very strong in the last several days. If you look at the Dow Jones, it was down by about 0.5%. S&P 500 retreated by about 0.2%, and Nasdaq added about 0.5%. If you look at the COVID-19 cases in the U.S., it continues to increase in a rapid pace. And on Sunday, White House Task Force member Dr. Deborah Brooks said that upcoming winter month of pandemic will be the worst event that this country will face, and not just the public health side. So clearly there's a continuation of concern about the COVID-19 cases for the United States, and it seems that that's the case globally, and that is resulting into somewhat of a correction in the market. However, because of continued ample liquidity in the system and that the vaccine is expected to come through within the winter time, people are still expecting the economy to recover sometime in the first quarter next year. So if that's the case, then the equity market correction might not be as severe as people might concern. And if you look at the European market, as you said, there's continuation of Brexit negotiation, and that what kind of stimulus package can be come through from EU side. And clearly this is creating uncertainty in terms of the European market. Economic growth-wise and also the share price performance-wise, European market continues to be the laggard to U.S. market or Asian market in general. So we have to watch and see what kind of boosting measure will be coming through and how much implication that would have for global economy in the future. If the economy is as expected to recover in the first quarter next year, then the equity market will probably move up further higher. But for the time being, people are just a bit uncertain, and therefore there is some kind of breathing time right now in the equity market.
Certainly the case here in Korea today. The cost be quite a bit lower. It seems concerns about the coronavirus both here in Korea and around the world. Tell us about the local markets.
Yes, if you look at the day before today, equity market did quite well, and it continued to break its record highs for Kospi. But as of today, as you said, there has been quite a correction. If you look at the Kospi, it's down now to right at around 2,700 territories. down by about 1.6%, and the Kosdaq is down even more by 2.16%. Overall, I think that people are concerned about this 2.5 distancing for Seoul area, and continuously this COVID-19 cases topping above 600 people per day is making government to kind of retreat back in terms of the overall social distancing, in a sense that you cannot really open up any kind of stores after 9 p.m. For Seoul. So clearly, this is going to create somewhat of a weaker domestic consumption month for December. And as you know, December is a very important month for the winter sales or the Christmas sales and overall. So I think that people are just kind of concerned that the consumption is not going to come through in December, and that might have a major implication for overall economic growth for Korea. However, though, we think that the shift has already occurred in terms of buying through the online sales rather than offline. If that continues to the percentage as we see, well above, say, 60% of total sales in Korea, we think that the domestic consumption weakness is not going to be as significant as market might be worried about. And if you look at the overall domestic customer deposits, it has gone up quite significantly in the last 2 days. Now it is hitting around 62.8 trillion won, sharply rising from below 60 trillion in 3 days ago. So we think that the liquidity is quite ample, and economy recovering will come through sometime in the first quarter next year, as global economy does. And if that's the case, then equity market has probably further room to go up in the future.
Well, switching gears here, according to the latest report from the Finance Ministry, Korea's national debt in October rose by more than 12.5 trillion won, which is more than $10 billion, just from the month before. Concerns here about what all the spending in the pandemic is doing to the fiscal soundness of the state. We got about a minute left. What do you make of the situation?
Well, you already know that all the governments are using budget to expand because of the COVID-19 cases. And as far as Korea is concerned, yes, it did go up in terms of the balance sheets, but it is still only 47.3% of gross domestic product, GDP, even though the debt is rising. And clearly that is not going to be a serious problem. So we don't think that the Korea will face with any severe concern because of the debt increases. It is that we need to see further spending to boost the economy in the future.
Got it. All right, Mr. Youth, thanks so much for sharing your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Data show that around 3 in 10 South Korean households consist of just one person. This is the first time it's been more than 30%. It's a sign of the country's changing social structure, its rapid aging especially, but also young people who are working but not married. Ji-young reports.
Ryu Jong-won moved to Seoul from Daegu several years ago and has been living alone at a studio apartment where it is easy to commute to and from work.
I usually eat 2 meals a day. I skip breakfast, I eat lunch at work, and I either have dinner at work or a quick meal when I get home.
Statistics Korea's data released on Tuesday showed that out of a total of 20.3 million households in South Korea in 2019, roughly 6.15 million were one-person households, which is more than 30%. When broken down by age group, 18% of all people living alone were in their 20s and 17% were in their 30s. About 1/3 of all one-person households were made up of people aged 60 and older.
The reason why those in their 20s or 30s take up a large part is because of their studies and careers. And due to the country's aging society, people aged 60 and older make up a large portion.
She added that because women have longer life expectancies than men, around 45% of women living alone were aged 60 and over, compared to just 22% of men. The average annual income of a one-person household was around $19,500 in 2018, which is about 36% of the average household income in South Korea. The data also said roughly 61% of one-person households were employed as of October last year, and 38% of one-person households were living in monthly rented housing. 엄지영, Arirang News.
It's December and the trees are bare now, so at Seoul Grand Park, they've given the gardens a makeover. Trees have been wrapped in cloth with animal patterns like giraffes, tigers, and zebras. The park has also been adorned with Christmas decorations, and the bushes have been sculpted into animal shapes as well. This winter, there'll also be an LED screen with cheerful messages, and the park's planted tulips, daffodils, and red spider lilies that'll bloom in spring. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
Following the Inter-Korean summits and the North Korea-US